President Donald Trump said Wednesday that he aims to give Americans a giant tax cut for Christmas. "It's going to be a lot of money," he said at the White House, projecting a $2,000 savings for an average middle-class family. "Our current tax code is burdensome, complex and profoundly unfair. It has exported our jobs, closed our factories, and left millions of parents worried that their children might be the first generation to have less opportunity than the last," the president said. "I am here today to tell you that we will never let that happen." In what senior administration officials said would be a closing argument speech, Trump recalled a campaign promise to pass a massive tax cut for the everyday, working Americans who are the backbone and heartbeat of our country. "Now we are just days away from keeping that promise and delivering a truly amazing victory for American families. We want to give you the American people a giant tax cut for Christmas. And when I say giant, I mean giant." President Donald Trump said Wednesday that we want to give you the American people a giant tax cut for Christmas. "And when I say giant, I mean giant. Our current tax code is burdensome, complex and profoundly unfair," the president said, closing the deal on a massive tax code overhaul. Trump predicted that typical middle-class families will see $2,000 in annual savings from tax cuts. The tax overhaul is complicated by Tuesday's U.S. Senate special election in Alabama, which cost Republicans a precious seat when Republican Roy Moore lost, meaning they will have less wiggle room to reach a tax cut majority once Democrat Doug Jones is seated. Republicans in the House and Senate said hours earlier that they had reached a deal in principle covering final details of the first major tax code overhaul in more than 30 years. "We're very close to getting it done," Trump told reporters at the White House in the early afternoon as he sat down for lunch with Republican congressional leaders. "We're very close to voting." Trump then called the coming changes a tax cut the likes of which we have yet seen, for not only business but for the working families of our country. And he lashed out at Democrats who are trying to stand in his way. "The cynical voices that oppose tax cuts grow smaller and weaker, and the American people grow smaller," he said as a handful of middle-class families and about 40 members of Young Republicans and College Republicans groups. Trump leaned on the example of another president to make his case in the afternoon. 55 years ago this week, President John F. Kennedy, a Democrat, launched a historic effort to pass sweeping, top-to-bottom tax cuts, he said. A half-century later, we're reminded that lowering taxes is neither a Republican or Democrat idea, but an American principle and an American idea. The sweeping changes will likely see final votes next week in both chambers of Congress, slashing income taxes for businesses and individual taxpayers starting in February. The president's main mission is to persuade Americans that while the tax rewrite will benefit corporations, ordinary earners will also see a significant benefit in the form of greater job security or higher wages as the IRS leaves more money on the table. President Trump met with Republican legislative managers from the House and Senate hours beforehand and said they had reached a deal.